welcome to the channel. Today we are in Dunseith in North Dakota, specifically at the San Haven Sanatorium. So if you can already look at the word and imagine what this place was. So people were treated here effectively for tuberculosis for many years in the 20th, first part of the 20th century, and over time its mission was transformed to take care of people with special needs, and that happened from the 1950s until it was concretized around 1973, where it effectively fell under the jurisdiction of the Grafton School for feeble-minded citizens. So, what's the history of this place? Well, around 1909, the legislature of North Dakota decided to address the tuberculosis endemic front on, and they had a grant for $10,000 to construct a place where tuberculosis patients could be treated. Now, this was before the advent and widespread use of antibiotics. So people with tuberculosis were particularly stigmatized, and they tend to be shunned by their communities. So they would be sent away from town to special areas, especially the sanatoriums, to be treated. So the state of North Dakota constructed this sanatorium starting around 1909, and by 1912 the first patients were already being treated here. By 1920 you had more than 100 people being treated at this facility. So it's a very big and covers quite a bit of land, and it's just about 10 to 11 miles south of the Canadian border. So you had a healthcare staff, maintenance staff, who were all housed at this location, and you could see it's a whole complex. Even though most of the buildings have fallen down and collapsed and been deteriorated over the years as nature slowly reclaims the land. So around the 1950s, like I said, the place was slowly transformed and taken over by the Grafton School. And the Grafton School was a school for people with special needs. And so for from the 1970s until the place finally shut down, it took care of these North Dakota citizens who had special needs. So over the years, as you can see, the place has slowly been left to deteriorate, and it's occurring in a very haphazard fashion. In fact, it's quite dangerous to visit this site. And in 2001, a 17-year-old who was doing some urban exploration actually fell down an elevator shaft about 20 feet to his death. So be very careful if at all you step on the ground. Lots of hazards if you go to visit the place. So the place was finally shut down in 1987, and in 1989 the state packed out of the place, and all the doors, everything, the offices were closed in 1989. 1992, the Turtle Mountain Band of the Chippewa Native Indians bought the site, and right now in 2021, from what I understand, the grounds are being leased to one of the local farmers. It's quite an interesting story, and one of the most visited places in North Dakota. Stories abound about people who were abandoned by their families. When they died, they were cremated and buried somewhere here on the grounds. So while I went there, I was solo. I was just by myself. Came back home and I was looking at the footage, and I noticed what seemed to be two dogs. I hope they are, because if you listen to the stories about this place, it seems like back in the day there would be wolves actually coming to visit the ground, even when the place was occupied by humans. So when this place closed down, there was a lot of bad blood. The locals weren't very happy. It provided a lot of jobs, very good paying jobs. So when it closed down in 1987 and was shuttered down in 1989, most of those jobs disappeared overnight. So that wasn't a very good thing for the community, and it caused a lot of people to be out of work, and they ultimately left. And I believe some of the repercussions are still being felt today, as the surrounding community, you can see, is very sparsely populated right now. Now back to the site. It's quite readily accessible. I didn't see anyone until I reviewed the footage, like I said, and I noticed those two, what I would presume to be dogs. I hope they were not wolves. And they moved slowly, deliberately, like as if they've done it 1,000 times, towards the building, into the building. I have heard stories. This is one of the most haunted places, not just in North Dakota, but actually in the United States. So I was quite scared when I reviewed that footage and I saw those two animals, which looked like dogs, moving into the building. Um, Part of the treatment for tuberculosis back in the day was people had to have a lot of sunlight. So you can see the buildings have lots and lots and lots of windows. The part you're looking at, bottom left of your screen, that's one of the earlier buildings. And a little bit further to the right, you have newer extensions that were added later at a later date. And again, like I said, the grounds had buildings for some of the staff. I believe at the peak you had more than 400 people or thereabouts working at this facility. So there are underground tunnels that connect buildings. North Dakota can get very cold. So if you had to transport a patient from one building to another, or even you yourself working here, it could get quite dangerous in winter conditions. As you can see, the site is quite extensive. So that would be a newer building over which you are looking at right now at the center of your screen. That would be one of the newer buildings. At some point in the early 70s, part of the complex was leased out, and it became a golf course. I don't think it exists anymore, but you can see some of the outbuildings where people were treated initially for tuberculosis and finally people with special needs. So the decline actually grew from the 1980s, where I believe it was around 1980, where the North Dakota Association of Retarded Citizens, excuse me guys, but that's exactly what it was. So that association sued the state of North Dakota. I believe some of their concerns were the quality of care that was being given to people living there, and just the general management and the people not feeling, at home. With advancements in medication and changes in the type of care that was provided to people with special needs, these people wanted to get back home, be closer to their communities, live with family. And so there was this major shift from keeping people institutionalized to having them move back into their communities where they could have a semblance of a normal life. So from that lawsuit, uh, I guess from there the state determined that the place would ultimately have to be shut down. And from there, everything just started going downhill until it culminated in 1987 when the place was shut down and the patients were transferred to, you know, doctors closer to their communities where the people could live with relatives and be taken care of. So, that's a little bit about the background of this place. As you can see, that main building has collapsed. The one you have on your screen right now is one of the initial buildings that was constructed in 1909 and went into use in 1912. People who were on call 24/7, doctors, nurses, and also the maintenance technicians lived on site, so they didn't have to travel to work. And there's just an extensive network of tunnels all around this huge site. I wasn't able to explore as much as I would have loved to. There were fallen and broken logs everywhere, and some had been cut up with chainsaws. But I just felt it was a bit hazardous to be going into a place like this all by myself. You can still see the road is paved, it's not totally damaged, and that testifies to the quality of work that was put into constructing this place. It's just amazing that after all these years, the buildings are still standing, most of them. There's been a lot of vandalism, as you can see, graffiti on the walls, people attempting to burn down the building, but of course it's constructed with you know, non-flammable material, so it's been quite difficult for vandals to take down the place. But with time, as you guys can see, the place is slowly just collapsing from, you know, neglect. There at the center of the screen you can see the chute that was used to, you know, dump, you know, whatever waste was generated by the facility. The building there in the back is totally gone. Just such a majestic place. And I don't know if the place is still being leased out from the Turtle Mountain Chippewa Indians by a farmer or some other entity, but somebody has been going around, you know, if and clearing up the walking paths. So that's being done for sure. And I don't know if patients or residents at this facility had access to the roofs, because back in the day, like I said, part of the treatment of tuberculosis was a lot of sunshine, and there was another very rudimentary way of treating tuberculosis, which was by surgically collapsing the lung. And when you do that, you deprive the lung of having air, and then the bacteria that causes tuberculosis dies out. So there's another stack chimney, which is from the steam room. Steam was piped around the whole facility to keep the place warm. And on that stack, when we get there, you guys will be able to see it right there. It has the Lorraine Cross. So the Lorraine Cross is one of the symbols of the American Lung Association. So, guys, just take a quick look. You'll be able to see the cross once I go over that, and there you can see the cross. So it's not a typical cross. The Lorraine Cross actually has one long vertical line and then two other lines on the upper third of that vertical line. And it was first suggested to the American Lung Association in 1902 by a French medical doctor, and so since then it has just been adopted as a symbol of the American Lung Association. And this is especially evident when they do their Christmas, December mailings, to patrons requesting for their support. And here you can see a close-up of how much destruction has happened over the years. I do apologize for my unscripted presentation of the place. I just thought I should let you guys know as the thoughts come to my mind and share with you. So that's that majestic front entrance. If you do a Google search, you would see how beautiful this facade used to look like, and today it's just a memory of itself. Every single valuable piece has been taken away, but you can see the quality of work that was done when the place was built. It just looks stunning. So those are the initial buildings from 1909. Standing in that courtyard, that would be on your right and directly in front of you. And the left wing was added much later. So that's part of the original, and there you see the left wing that was added at a later date. Tons and tons of windows to allow sunlight into the building. As for future plans, there is nothing yet in the works. Many of the locals have ties to this place, either a parent, a relative, a grand uncle, grand aunt, either worked or was a patient in this place. So there's increasingly calls for the place to be rehabilitated. I don't think that might be possible. As you can see, the building has collapsed, huge sections of the building, so it's definitely a hazard. I wouldn't encourage anyone to go into the buildings. I have been talking so much, I don't know if I missed the footage of those two dogs or wolves or whatever they were. If I did, guys, just make a mention below, and I will go through the footage again and see where the timestamp puts those two dogs or whatever they were. The place, when you're there by yourself, you just have this eerie feeling. You feel like you hear all. It's almost like something is around there that you. It's hard to explain. But I was there by myself, but I could feel like there were tons and tons of people around me. It's a weird feeling. And what's even spookier is that those two dogs, they went by. I was right there, but they basically just strolled into the building like they didn't even notice me. And yeah, I don't know if they were watching me from a distance, but they totally ignored me and went straight into the building like that's where they live, and they've done that 1,000 times before. So that really scared me quite a bit, that I might have stood there and somebody or something was observing me and I had no clue at all. So I really appreciate you guys sticking around, watching with me. I shot this in 4K if I'm not mistaken. I'll check again, but it's just stunning watching it here on my computer screen. Looks beautiful and stunning. Thanks for coming with me on this journey, and I will see you guys on the next video.